They fined him $500 for planting tomatoes, called his backyard oasis a rat haven without proof. Karen, the HOA president, claimed she was just enforcing the rules, but the smirk on her face said otherwise. She thought her authority was untouchable, her secret rule changes untraceable. What she didn't know, Mark had a stack of evidence that would not only expose her lies, but bring her reign of terror crashing down. The courtroom? Let's just say Karen didn't leave with that smug smile. But let's start from the beginning. My name is Mark Wilson. I'm a high school biology teacher, a father of two, and until recently, a pretty chill guy. Living in the quiet suburbs of Springville, I found peace in my new hobby after the pandemic, gardening. My backyard became a sanctuary, vibrant vegetables, blossoming flowers, fruit trees, and even a small pond with koi fish. It wasn't just a garden, it was a piece of paradise. That peace shattered one morning when my phone rang. The caller ID read Karen Green, the HOA president. "Mark," she started, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "Your garden violates our community standards. We can't allow such disorder." Disorder? My garden was pristine. I even had a compost system tucked neatly away. "Karen, there must be some mistake. Everything is within my property lines," I replied, trying to stay calm. She didn't back down. "The HOA requires uniform landscaping. Grass. Only grass. If you don't comply, you'll face fines." I stood in my kitchen, gripping the phone, staring out at the vibrant greenery I'd poured my heart into. How could anyone look at that and call it a mess? But her tone left no room for discussion. This wasn't a friendly reminder. It was a warning shot. That call was my first clue that Karen was about to turn my life upside down. Little did she know, she'd just picked a fight with someone who wasn't afraid to dig in and fight back. A week later, I opened my mailbox to find a bright red notice stamped, "Violation, $500 fine." The reason? Non-compliance with architectural standards. I was floored. What standards? I combed through the HOA guidelines I'd received when I bought the house. Nothing about gardens. Frustrated, I decided to confront the issue at the next HOA meeting. The meeting room was stuffy, filled with folding chairs and tension. At the head of the table sat Karen Green, her saccharine smile a thin mask for her smugness. "Mark," she began, "we simply can't allow your weeds to ruin the aesthetic of our community." Weeds? My garden was pristine. Then, with dramatic flair, she pulled out photos, close-ups of my backyard, taken without my knowledge. "Who authorized spying on my property?" I asked, my voice rising. Karen shrugged. "The HOA has the right to install cameras to enforce rules," she said, as if she hadn't just admitted to violating my privacy. The room went quiet. My neighbors exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke up. It got worse. A few days later, the HOA started distributing letters claiming my garden was attracting rats. It was an outright lie, but soon neighbors started complaining. I realized this wasn't just about a garden. Karen was out to destroy me, and talking wouldn't stop her. It was time to fight back. While Karen waged her crusade against my garden, I wasn't about to roll over and let her win. I headed straight to the county archives, where I uncovered the original HOA bylaws. Guess what? My garden didn't violate a single rule. The so-called standards Karen kept quoting, recently added, and conveniently without community approval. Fueled by this discovery, I installed security cameras around my property. It didn't take long for them to capture Karen and one of her HOA buddies trespassing, snapping photos of my yard like paparazzi on a mission. Watching the footage, I felt both anger and determination. They were practically handing me evidence on a silver platter. But the real turning point came when my neighbors started speaking up. Mr. Dan, a retired veteran, revealed he'd been fined for his mailbox being the wrong shade of white. Mrs. Elizabeth, a sweet elderly woman, confessed that Karen had threatened her with penalties over her flower pots. Together, we realized we weren't alone. Karen had been bullying the entire neighborhood, and it was time to show her we weren't afraid to fight back. With our combined stories and a growing stack of evidence, we began planning a response Karen would never see coming. Armed with evidence of Karen's misconduct, illegal rule changes, invasion of privacy, and forged HOA documents, we filed a lawsuit against the HOA and Karen herself. The courtroom was packed, tension hanging thick in the air. Karen sat confidently at first, but her composure crumbled as our attorney played the footage of her trespassing on my property. Her face turned crimson. When the forged documents were presented, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Karen's attempt to feign ignorance only made her look guiltier. Each piece of evidence chipped away at her facade until she sat slumped, visibly defeated. The judge didn't hold back. The fines against me were ruled invalid. Karen's rule changes were deemed unenforceable, and she was ordered to pay damages for emotional distress. On top of that, Karen was removed as HOA president, and the new board announced a full audit of her past actions. Justice was served. Karen's reign of terror was over, and the neighborhood could finally breathe again.